Um, Unfortunately, you may hear food cooking in the background or people clanging outside, but I'm not being as strict with my recording times with these, off the cuff discussions because I just need to get them done, and so they're not going to be the same bad quality as my audiobook. So now that we have the principle or the concept of balance as a diagnostic tool or record established, we can proceed to the next, in my opinion, pertinent or logical step, which is the length of the measurement or increment of human perception. Okay. The reason that this is important is because it relates to free will and willpower and determinism and stuff like that. So, let's say you were on the freeway and you were driving, right? And you just got off a work shift and you're super sleepy, and then all of a sudden you're home and you're like, oh man, I don't even remember the drive home. Or you're listening to a friend and someone you really want to listen to, but you've got worries on your mind and you just start thinking about these other things, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember what this person said for the last 5 minutes or whatever. And we're also going on the assumption that we are conscious beings, we do exist, and we're shelving concepts like simulation theory and other alternative theories, multiverse theories, stuff like that for later videos. Okay, so this is just straightforward, one universe, and we're all conscious beings, and we do have free will in this example. Okay, my question is, what was going on when you lost that piece of perceptual focus? Okay, if you look at our linguistics and our language and our descriptions that we use, we can say things like, "Oh man, I lost track of time. It slipped my mind. I lost my mind. I was distracted." It's linguistic ways of trying to represent a phenomenological state that is very vague in general. Okay, so my theory is that there are windows of perception that we can utilize to be more present and more conscious and expand our consciousness, which is separate from intelligence, in my opinion. It's like, they're both utilized for being conscious, but you can be more conscious than intelligent, more intelligent than conscious. So basically, another question is, what is the internal metronome of the perception of time? Okay. You could say that it is blink rate. So when you blink, you closing your eyes and you are cutting off the visual data that is a reference point. Okay. One thing you can try, okay, is when you're walking around somewhere, like in, say the store, okay, or your house, think about or witness how many times your eyes jump from object to object, from scene to scene. It's not this continuous focal length hold, right? It's sporadic and very, very transitory. Okay, so that could also be one of the internal metronomes, is when a subject is not focused on and a new subject is acquired. Okay, so it could be visual with blinking. It could also be the breath, okay, because you blink approximately the same amount of breaths you take in a minute. So the breath, people talking about, I was holding my breath and, took my breath away, okay? It is another physical link to an emotional state that could be also linked to how we measure time. So like if you're running after, you're in the savannah, you're, Lasone, right? You're running on the plains, your heart rate is up, okay? So just like in a car accident, time may seem like it is slowing down because your mind is trying to make you pay faster attention to things. And so you get time dilation because your mind is saying, take all this in, slow down, or speed up perception, but slow down to catch everything. And the breath could be similar. You're breathing more, you must be doing something physical, you need to pay more attention, so the perception of time is altered. It could be, so the blinking, the breath, could be the heart itself, but that is a lot faster, right, than eye blink or breathing. So if you've ever meditated, you know that you can close your eyes so that perception is gone. You can slow your breathing. You can slow your heart rate. And then at that point, what is the perceptual time measurement in that state? Okay. If you've ever been in a flotation tank, you know that when you're in there, maybe your first float, you're touching the walls and you're floating around. You're like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's novel, right? But your second float and on, you have no perception of gravity, of temperature, of direction. You feel like you're floating vertically sometimes. You hallucinate. Okay, you lose track of time because you don't have the internal metronome reminding you. Okay. So, if there is an internal metronome, does it apply to these losses of focus, these losses of being present? And I would say, as this relates to free will, now my fridge is making all these noises. Sorry. So in other words, you can, let's say you're talking to someone, okay? You can expand your awareness by focusing on the strata of sensory data, okay? You can focus on the sounds around you, not just the person's voice, just like in the book, Lasone is looking in the water, right? You have the sound of the person. You have the sound of your own breathing, the sound of your own heart. You have environmental cues. You have the light. When focused on the visual part, right? You have the light that's coming, bouncing off objects and stuff like that. And then you have what the person is saying, and then you have who the person is. All these layers can help expand the experience, the depth of the experience. And I think the opposite is true. If you're not paying attention, then your perceptual window is much shorter. And you may not even, quote unquote, be there at all. Like when you drive home on the freeway and you don't remember how you got home. Where the hell were you? You're a conscious being with a memory, right? You apparently can't access those memories, unless you're under hypnosis or something. So your mind, your consciousness went somewhere, your ego. It was like sidelined or, diverted or however you want to say it, right? So I would say that if you are on a linear timeline, let's say time is linear, okay, let's just, for this argument, it is a timeline and you have the slices of balance that we have recorded, or you could if you had the technology to record every position of everything. And you could see on that timeline the processes of you losing attention and consciousness. There would be things you could relate to it and trace to it, and you could see the entire picture. So this directly relates to free will and other states of consciousness and action and stuff like that. And I will get into those soon, but basically what I'm saying is consider what that is, that absence of attention, of consciousness. Does it apply to free will? Is it just, to say it slips your mind or I lost track of time, these descriptions and explanations are too surface. They're like, some people have a very limited emotional vocabulary. Okay, they're just like, I was mad, I was happy. Well, what do you mean by mad? Well, I was pissed off. I felt cheated by whatever. Well, what do you mean by cheated? You can go through and find the finer points of the emotion in the linguistics. Without being able to describe how you feel, you don't really get a clearer picture of what happened in the balance. Because the balance, if you're talking about emotions, the emotions are almost like the scientific instrument for delving into the conscious and subconscious mind. Okay, because we could look at the electrochemical or biological or whatever, but it wouldn't really give you the free will aspect of it. It wouldn't tell you why this person consciously or subconsciously chose to zone out during this period. Okay, the only way to really map that is to look at like blood sugar, which I'll tie into free will, stress levels, but also the emotional states are very important for showing the cause and effect when we look at balance in any situation. So just think of those perceptual windows, and maybe you're going about your own day, and you're looking at things and you're listening to people, and you could always practice trying to expand your awareness. So you want to expand your awareness and narrow your focus. If you're trying to focus on something important, like a friend talking, or the beauty of, like, let's say there's like a puppy, okay? Well, you can expand your awareness to encompass everyone in the vicinity that loves puppies and is laughing about the puppy and wants to play with them. So that's like one layer, okay? And then you can also encapsulate how you feel about the animal in that moment, and you can amplify your presence in your own timeline. Almost to the point, I'm a science fiction writer, so I would say almost to the point that when you are not focused enough in the moment, when you're not present enough in the moment, you are not really emerged or emerging into your own timeline. It could be that the solidity of being is somewhat dependent upon a conscious exertion. Okay, so like people talk about like gurus and holy people. And so we can ask ourselves, when we see these people, gurus, historically famous, messiahs, whatever, and even like modern day people that teach spirituality, what are they doing? They're not superhuman. I mean, they are human beings just like us, but they are applying the ability to pay attention to more things, the richness, the depth of consciousness, and then they're narrowing their focus to talk to you or the TV, or, no one watches TV anymore, but the camera. Okay, so they are able to do both things simultaneously. You go to them, climb the mountain, the dude's up there, and you're like, oh, my life is terrible. How can I be more this or that? And the guy is holding on to the awareness of his memories, okay, and the wisdom that he has, but he is also relating that to everything else going on around him, And then you're there in front of him, and he's focusing like a laser on you, holding all these other things in his mind's eye. And then he's able to deliver something to you that is has more momentary substance. It's more emergent in the moment. That's why I think that people, when they have these meetings with these spiritual people, they're like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. I felt this energy and, this effect, that effect. I think it's because they're focusing more on their own timeline. Okay, so you have two individuals that are talking in what I call magical talking, magical space. They're hyper-focused in the present moment while they're expanding their consciousness, their awareness. And the result is something that feels magical. It feels special, and there's all kind of like subtext, unconscious, subconscious subtext that obviously builds on that. Because if you think, if you were to meet, like, let's say the Dalai Lama, well, he's a very, empathic or compassionate person, and he has this, as maybe you saw the movies about him, and it's like meeting a rock star of the spiritual world. But the point is that all of these things combined, you can do these things in your own life every day in mundane situations. You don't have to wait for a special moment, like, everyone says, pick worthy. You don't have to wait for that, because the majority of moments are mundane. They're average moments that we slog through in linear time to get to the other moments that we want to get to. And then there's bad moments or, painful moments we experience. But even in any of those moments, you can expand your awareness and narrow your focus to be as fully aware as you want to be in your own timeline. And this can aid in reaching non-native states. So I think next I'll talk about native states, non-native states.